You ever meet someone so entitled they think the rules don't apply to them? That's Karen, the kind of woman who marches into every room like she owns I-10, complains when the air feels too democratic. Our neighborhood's been dealing with her HOA nonsense for years. But the day she grabbed my husband's badge and snapped it in half like it was a name tag from Target, that was the day things changed. Because my husband isn't just anybody. And that badge, it wasn't just for show. She didn't even flinch when she did it. Just stood there on our front porch, manicured nails, wine tumbler in one hand, and this smug looked like she'd just taught us a lesson. She muttered something about unauthorized insignia and HOA standards, then strutted back across the street like she'd just cleaned up the neighborhood. I didn't say a word. Neither did my husband. He just looked down at the two halves of his badge, his jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grind. 5 minutes later, unmarked SUVs rolled up. Not one, not two, 4. They moved in quiet, fast. Tactical gear, no sirens. You'd think they were after a terrorist. But no, just Karen. Karen in her pink robe and knockoff Birkenstocks, yelling at the officers for stepping on her rose bushes. She still didn't get it. Didn't get that she hadn't just insulted a neighbor. She'd tampered with federal property. Didn't get that the badge she snapped was tied to things she had no business knowing about. Didn't get that my husband doesn't go by Steve when he's working. And then, just before they knocked on her door, one of the agents looked over at me and said 2 words I'll never forget. Stay inside. I stayed inside, but I watched. From behind the curtain, I saw Karen fling the door open like she always does, like she's the queen of the cul-de-sac. Her voice carried across the lawn, loud, shrill, demanding to speak to the supervisor. One of the agents calmly raised a hand, said something too low for me to hear, and the next thing I knew, Karen was face down on her perfectly trimmed welcome mat, screaming about her rights. They cuffed her. She kept yelling about lawsuits and reputations, even as they read her the Miranda warning. But what shook me wasn't Karen. It was my husband. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there in the hallway, watching through the same curtain I was. Calm, still, almost cold. I turned to him, finally breaking the silence. "Steve," I whispered, "what was that badge?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, eyes darker than I'd ever seen them, and said, "It wasn't supposed to be here." There's more. Of course there is. The badge, the agents, the classified files I'd later find tucked beneath the floorboards of our bedroom. But that night, that was just the beginning. That night, after the SUVs disappeared into the dark, after Karen's screams faded into the distance, I stood in our kitchen staring at the cracked ceramic tile under my feet. Same spot where her wine tumbler had shattered hours earlier. It felt like everything had. Stevier, whatever his real name, Washad, gone quiet again. He sat at the table, staring at the broken badge like it was a piece of his past clawing its way back into the present. I couldn't take it anymore. "You need to tell me," I said. "Now." He finally looked up. "I used to work for a part of the government that doesn't technically exist." I blinked. "Like CIA?" He gave a hollow laugh. "The CIA files reports to us when things get weird?" A chill ran through me. Weird how? Unexplainable. Dangerous. Stuff you don't read about in the news because it never makes it that far. I was about to press him when the lights flickered, then went out. Silence. Heavy. Unnatural. Steve stood immediately. "Go to the basement." "What?" "Now." He grabbed the lockbox from the pantry, the one I'd always assumed was full of tax documents, and yanked it open. Inside, a sleek black firearm, a phone with no logo, and a stack of laminated cards in languages I couldn't read. "Steve, what's happening?" He didn't answer. He was listening, head tilted like a man who knew what kind of silence came before something bad. Then came the knock. Not at the front door, not the back, but on the window, the second-story window. Steve said nothing. He just gripped the gun tighter and motioned for me to stay back. The knocking came again, 3 steady taps, then silence. I held my breath. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. Steve moved up the stairs, each step slow, deliberate, silent. I stayed below, frozen in place. The air felt thick, like something unseen was watching. The second-story window was wide open when he reached it. No one outside, no footprints, no sound. Only a single piece of paper stuck to the glass, fluttering slightly in the night wind. He peeled it off, read it. His face changed, tightened, but he said nothing. Just folded the paper, slid it into his shirt pocket, and pulled the curtain closed. Back downstairs, he dropped the black phone into the sink, turned on the faucet. The phone dissolved like it was made of paper. I stood motionless, unable to speak. "It's over," he finally said. "For now." The next morning, Karen returned. Not a scratch on her, no explanation, no apology. The neighborhood didn't ask. But everyone watched, eyes full of questions they were too afraid to voice. A week later, she sold the house, left without a word. Her garden wilted, her front door still bearing the faint marks from the handcuffs. Steve went back to normal. Yard work, quiet dinners, like nothing had happened. Except one thing, the old lockbox wasn't in the pantry anymore. Now it's buried beneath the floorboards, along with the note I read when he wasn't looking. She saw something. She broke protocol. She's lucky it was just a badge.